Welcome back to the Class of 99 podcast, episode 2. The podcast for people who wouldn't have turned in Luigi Mangione. If you heard the original intro, whatever, episode, it was before anyone had been apprehended. We all know this story, unless you've been living under a rock, and even then, I think you've heard some version of the story about the CEO of, United Healthcare being, as I termed it, ignominiously shot in the back as he was trying to attend a thing. You know the story. And then they found a guy who may or may not. I'm not a conspiracy guy, and this is not the place for that, but I don't know. There's people that have analyzed his eyebrows, and there's no way he could have grown a unibrow in 5 days. I work as an esthetician. The internet's gone. The internet was already nuts for a while. It's gone even crazier. You've all read the memes. I talk about those in the first episode, but it's I actually literally I think I put the thing in, but I say please don't listen to. So you've all read the memes, heard the memes. If you're on Instagram, which, to be honest with you, like Instagram Reels, in my opinion, is like the best show in town right now. It's like the best entertainment. There's, the good ones, obviously. The algorithm will sometimes throw you into it's a weird space. Like I ended up on like Russian Instagram for a while. Like I'm talking about like Balkan, Eastern European, like hardcore. Like the comments are all in Cyrillic. And I took like a week or 2 weeks of Russian, so I know I could kind of read it, but I have no idea what it means. Unless it says karandash, which means pencil. Anyway, I'm rambling. This is the podcast, again, for people who wouldn't turn. So let's try this again. In fact, I'm going to cut, just in case. You know what? I'm not. I'll do it live. You should all know that reference. I'm going to do a third welcome. Welcome to the Class of 99 podcast, episode 2. The podcast for people who wouldn't have turned in Luigi Mangione. In other words, the podcast for ordinary people who worked very hard to become extraordinary. That means you've had a real job at some point in your life. You know what a W-2 looks like. You weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth, or no cutlery at all in your mouth. If any, like a wooden spoon. And basically the 99, even 0.5 of us, 0.9. I'm not a math guy, whatever. You know what I mean. That's why it's called Class of 99, man. Come on, it's us. You actually had to do something. But if you heard which I asked you not to, but if you bothered to listen to the intro first episode, which incidentally I tried to re-record. What you heard is the first one, and I recorded like 2 or 3 versions of it, and they just kept getting worse. Like I was just like, "Hello, guys," blah, blah, blah. Like I don't know. I'm not a. First of all, I've deliberated doing a podcast for like 14 or more years, probably 15 years. Let's just round up. Speaking of math, hold on. By the way, you guys are going to totally be part of the journey of me going from, I am not a professional at this. I don't know how to do it. I've spoken to people. I've spoken in front of audiences, I guess, if you consider a classroom an audience, but not to a machine, knowing that, people are going to listen. Oh, speaking of people, I do want to there's a special shout out. A piece of advice, unsolicited, which is the best kind of advice. Stay hydrated. It's like the secret to everything. I have this gigantic Starbucks cup. Somebody gave it to me. I don't go. No disrespect if you go, but I'm not a Starbucks person. But I don't know. It's like 20-something ounces. So if I drink 4 or 5 of these, that's a gallon a day. Now that's a hydrated dude. For the metric people, I guess it would be 4 liters. Roughly. I'm not a metric guy. You know what? I am in a way, and we're not going to talk about that yet. That's later. It is technically what I'm trying to get my PhD at Harvard. Trying is like bolded, triple underlined, because as you know, if you went to two Harvards, that's spelled TWO, Harvards with a S.com. If you do go there and you watch some of the videos or read the articles, you realize, yeah, Harvard has done like near everything in their power to prevent me from doing it. These are separate projects. They're interrelated, like I mentioned before. Obviously, some of the stories that I tell are going to be, some of them will be Harvard stories. It's a big chunk of my life, but for better and worse, good, bad, and ugly, and emphasis on the latter too. But I also lived another life before this, and even during this, and that's the spirit of this podcast, is telling our stories, right? Telling our stories, frankly, that some people don't want to hear, but actually, I think they do. I think it's more that people don't want to tell. I don't mean us. Like, we will tell it to each other. I mean, like, the people that spread stories. They don't really want to hear about, like, our real, like paying $500 for groceries, like I did the other day. It's just ridiculous. I know everyone's talking about groceries. I'm not going to get into, but that was particularly insane. Or having, for example, my stupid fridge in my apartment in my Harvard-owned building, which I think I mentioned. I don't know which version you heard. I forgot. In my Harvard-owned building, which incidentally they're trying to evict me actively right now, trying to evict me. And yeah, I never finished my shout out. Special shout out to my lawyers, who I was encouraged to tell the story that I'm going to tell you today, but by a few people, but who said, "Hey, you gotta start with this story, man," which is a Harvard story, sort of. But so shout out to my lawyers who were among the group that are like, "Hey, so tell us." It's kind of hard to tell in, like, these guys are busy. So and when I say guys, I mean guys, gals, whatever they identify. Remember, guys, remember all. I'm not getting. This is not going to be about politics. It's about, again, telling our stories. First, starting with me, you're going to hear some of my stories, some of the Harvard stuff, some of the non-Harvard stuff. And as I mentioned, please reach out. For now, the best way to reach the podcast. The podcast does have its own its own link. It's going to have its own website soon. That's the class, include the word the class of 99, the numbers 99.com, which will take you to Harvard's website, which is separate. That's going to be more focused on the Harvard thing, blah, blah, blah. That also has a that's like a fundraiser and project to tell that, kind of the part of Harvard that people don't know. And, there'll be some overlap. But, yeah, if you can donate, anything makes a difference. $5, $10, $20, $1 million, if you're Elon Musk, who would not like, I have a really good feeling he would not like this podcast or me. I know Grimes, I'd get along with Grimes, his ex-wife. I'd get along with her. She doesn't like him anymore. I mean, this isn't a gossip thing, but I don't know. I digress. So, for those of you who did support this, send notes, or some of you did contribute, thank you. I want to thank you. Follow up on on the previous episode, right? On the story, the last time where we left off, they unapprehended anybody. What is it called? United Healthcare. Brian Thompson, CEO, murder. Which, again, I don't celebrate the death of anybody, and especially the murder of somebody. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but I do share the sentiment, which is now endemic, meaning there's tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people all over the internet saying something in this theme, shall we say. It's difficult to locate sympathy for somebody who made his living also killing people. He didn't pull the trigger, but, denying claims. The statistics are, and, I even had United Healthcare. And incidentally, I've worked in insurance. I've worked in car insurance. I've worked in life insurance, and I've worked in health insurance at some point in my life. Those are all great stories. That's what I'm talking about. Like, if you're like me, and you probably are, like if you package printers or you sold boots, to whatever, and those are also true stories that are part of my life. Again, for later. Yeah, you're in the right place. Welcome. So they apprehended a guy. I think I said already. They may or may not be. Am I being repetitive? I don't remember. I took this time I was prepared. I wrote down show notes, but I'm a random guy. Yeah, no, they did apprehend this guy Luigi Mangione, and he's there's all kinds of great stories. I mean, God, I'm not going to repeat them all now, but he, for instance, when he was transported from one prison to another, he came out looking what the kids call clean, crispy. He came out with a clean haircut and eyebrows nice and shaped, which evidently is some sort of like a prison code, which means we're taking care of this guy. We got his back, and you get his back. And if something happens to him, it wasn't us. As I mentioned before, like, don't try to, first of all, we're not talking about politics. And second of all, don't try to guess my politics because you're going to be wrong. That's not a challenge or disrespect. It's just it's not black and white. It's not, or I should say, it's not red and blue. It's a lot more complicated than that. And I think that that's something that we're going to build on as we start telling our stories. My stories, and then please, go, like I said, there's a website, go on there. There's a contact page. Send me your ideas, show ideas, or your stories, and how much you want or don't want shared. I'm not going to be putting you on blast. That's not the goal. I'm not going to be like, Rhonda, whatever, told me this. No, if you don't want that, I won't. But yeah, no, tell me your stories. Your stories about working to do something or being screwed over in trying to do something, but still doing it or not doing it. This isn't just like the other site is more about these, the Harvards of the world, these elite colleges, and how they screw over people who are like middle class, working class people whose parents actually worked overtime or 2 shifts so their kids could be better off. That's my story. Let me put it this way. I didn't graduate in like the 4 years and blah, it like everybody else. I had to take time off. I worked at Foot Locker, which evidently is no longer, is like closing its last few stores, but when it existed, I had to make my way. I had to sneak into classes for a while. I just ended up getting back just to hear, to learn stuff. It's I know that sounds like TV, but that's actually a true story. It's actually was part of my admissions essay. Like, not that you care, my admissions essay to this place. When I made the very wise, and I say that very cynically, the very wise decision of fulfilling a young man's dream of getting my PhD in history. So don't get excited. It's not like there's not like a bright future for. I mean, if you make it, you are what you make of it. Isn't that that's the bottom line for, I think, a lot of us. Anyway, I'm going to tell this story today. Hopefully, let me see. Is this thing still recording? Last time I recorded a thing, so you're going to hear me. First of all, I'm used to talking. You're going to hear the noise. Okay, good. No, it's recording. No, last time I spoke into this thing for like, I don't know, like the better part of like 45, 50 minutes. only to find out that it had been saying no card, like a recording card. It's so you got basically an amateur me recording on a professional device. It's a good machine. It's been around for a while, but it's still good. So anyway, today's story is actually pretty serious, which is, I may laugh, try to laugh about it, but it's actually a pretty serious story, and it goes. The reason I'm telling it, and the reason why more than 1, more than 2, more than 3 people encouraged me to start with this is because it kind of is a foundation for so many of the stories I'll tell. Whether or not they involve Harvard, this one does. Whether or not they involve Harvard or not, it has certainly been a part of. If you hear that, it's my refreshment. Don't you love people who do that? Everybody does. No, it's influenced basically the last, I don't know, what is it? I told you, 6 years plus of my life. Yeah, it was a big deal. In some ways, it's very much connected to the Tale of Two Harvards, the Two Harvards thing.com, but then also this project. So it's like, it just naturally makes sense to tell this story. Definitely is a good place to start. We're now in November of 2018. I am in the same place where I am now, which is in my apartment in a Harvard-owned building, which, as I mentioned already, I think like 90 times, Harvard is trying to evict me from. When I say trying, I mean they're kind of doing it illegally. I wish I could pick a better word, but it's just they're not. Yeah, they're kind of, Harvard thinks that they can make the rules. Harvard is a not. It's more like an entity. It's the problem is that there are the people that work at Harvard. Not everybody. It's a group. It's a small. Like anything else. All it takes is a few turds in a sock. He said, trying to keep it clean. A few turds in the punch bowl to ruin the whole. You only need one turd in the punch bowl. That's a bad example, but you know what I mean. Yeah, it's just it's a group of people who think that because they work at Harvard, they are Harvard, right? That they not realizing they're as disposable as anybody else. This is a big machine that's existed longer than the United States, founded in 1636, named after, since you all asked, named after a guy who donated like a few books. I mean, it literally was not a lot of. I don't know the number right now off the top of my head, but it was like it's certainly fewer books than I own. And no, not bragging, but that's when books were valuable. So they're like, hey, well, we'll just name it Harvard. I don't know if you ever visited. There's a statue that isn't him, but they say it's him. But I'm not gonna. We'll do an episode. We'll do it live. We'll do an episode on Harvard if you want. Let me know in like the comment. I don't know how this platform that I'm using. I already signed up and everything and so I don't know how it works. But you just tell me. There's what you can reach me. Reach me. Send me a pigeon with a message. I got a story about that. That's a funny story. When my buddy from New York thought he found a special honing pigeon. That's what they're called, the messenger pigeons. He's like, wait, man. Anyway, that's another story. So we're in November of 2018. I'm minding my own business. As I've said in other contexts, that's how all great stories start. Minding my own business. In fact, I'm asleep, or dozing off at least, on my couch, my velvet couch. I only say that because it says a lot about my tastes, but also because it becomes relevant later. On my velvet couch, and I'm to like Curb Your Enthusiasm. I'm like falling asleep. I'm out. I'm definitely not awake. I hear a frantic buzzing of my intercom, like nonstop. I've never heard anything like it. Thing wouldn't stop, so I had to go to the machine. I'm like, who? I figured it was some drunk person who got lost or something. I hear like, what's up? Who's this? Right? Who it is? And it's hey, I'm gonna try to not use people's real name, even though I could, but whatever. Let's say, hey, it's Sally. Now, Sally is an old friend of mine, so I know her from, we've been out of touch for about a year or so. She really shouldn't know where I live because I had moved away and moved to a new place. I was already kind of confused, but she sounded like something was wrong. She's like, can you let me in? Sure, of course. Let her into the building, buzz her in. Now, keep in mind, this is 2 a.m. Okay, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. It's extra weird. And, it's November, so it's cold outside. This is Massachusetts. I let her into the apartment. Now, she's acting weird. She's pacing around. She's totally out of character. I don't know if she's drunk or high, or what seemed more likely as I started trying to talk to her, was that something happened to her. And it kind of came down. I don't want to overtell this story, but she was, I was hanging out with these two guys, and then it was totally incoherent. It was jumping around. You think this episode is incoherent? No, this is at least has some. This is, she was saying. I was like, what the heck? What I gathered more or less on that. I'm kind of quoting. I was with these guys. Yeah, it turned out one of them was my neighbor. I didn't know. And we were watching the elections, and we were whatever. But they have my phone, my wallet, and I was locked out. I'm like, okay, I already know that you don't live. I know that she lives several blocks away, So I don't know why these dudes would have her take her phone and wallet. So it's already weird. Okay. And it's also weird that she's like walking around in a circle, more or less, in my apartment at 2 a.m. pacing. You want a glass of water? No. You want some wine or something? Chill out? No. You want no. You want to have a seat? No. You want a chair? No. I'm like, oh, she's frantic. I mean, I just couldn't get a straight answer out of her, except when I asked her about how the heck did you know where I lived? Now, the backstory on that is quick. I had moved away for basically an academic year. June-ish of the previous year, I'd moved to New York, just work reasons, not this long story, it's its own story, and come back like for the academic year, which is like August, September-ish. She did, she knew where I used to live, which was another building. There's no like labels or anything, no reason why she should know where I live. So I asked her, how the heck did you even know where I lived? Well, it turns out this dude who's my neighbor, who I've never met, by the way. It's really important. I've never met this dude. Never seen him. I don't know him. I don't know his name. I don't know anything about him. Turns out this dude, he's like, oh, I'm going to use the name Frank. Okay, Frank. Let's call him Frank. It turns out this dude is in the same program. Now, when I say program, I mean academic program and department. It's like a little commute. When you're a grad student at any of these, like, quote-unquote, elite little schools, there's a few of you. Every year they admit a small number, 10 to 15. And so you kind of know who's who. These guys, so it turns out this guy is like a first year. So he's been here for like weeks, not even. And somehow he knows who I am, when I'm like 5 years ahead of him at that time. So I'm that far ahead. I'm off doing research. I'm doing my own thing. There's no reason why he knows me or should know me. Well, evidently she says, well, he looked through your like packages in mail and told me that you lived here. Well, I never got a full answer on like, well, there's a part missing there, right? Like, okay, that I'm just, to him, I should just be a random name and certainly a random face, right? I never saw him, and I'm a dude that notices everything. I have 20/10 vision, but I got LASIK. That was what was happening. So that's the beginning of it. Then, I don't know, she's there for a few minutes. I'm trying to talk to her like, oh, how was France? Because she'd win. I was trying to do my best, like to try to, I don't know, get her to act normal. And suddenly there's like this super like hard, like, I'm talking about like hard ass knock, like police style knock, like doom doom, boom boom boom, right, at my front door. Something like 2:15 now in the morning, more or less. Yeah, it's probably been about 15 minutes. Whatever, it's been 15 minutes. First of all, I'm startled by the like aggressiveness of it. So I'm already like first of all, I have this woman in here, and my lady's also there. So I have this woman who's acting totally out of character and strangely, like maybe, and it's showing signs. Frankly, I'm no professional, but from what they do a training here. It's part of, it's like obligatory. It's part of like registering every term. They train you in like how to identify, because Harvard was going to lose its federal funding, which is a whole other. If you go to the 2harvards.com website, you could read a little bit about Harvard's antics with the federal funding issue. They're a private institution. A lot of people who know about Harvard know they're the wealthiest university in the world, like the biggest endowment. But people don't realize that we pay the bills, like help pay the bills. Meaning our tax dollars, they get hundreds of millions of dollars of tax money, federal tax money every year. Also, on top of that, they are allowed to loan people, which is also relevant. People are federal tax money through federal loans, which are guaranteed through the Civil Rights Act of blah blah, Title IV. You guys don't want to hear all that. Maybe if the lawyers are my homies are listening, they're interested in that. But I mean, some of you are too. I assume that if you're like me, you know how to plumb, meaning like being a plumber or whatever, electrician. But you're also read the newspaper every day. I mean, maybe it's interesting, and if it is, let me know and I'll talk. Guys, I got more stories I know what to do with. But anyway, so they're knocking aggressive. I go to the front door. I look through the peephole, and it's two guys I don't know, and they're visibly, at least in my opinion at the time, which I would confirm. They seem kind of drunk. They're acting weirdly. They're either acting stupid or they're acting dangerously, which is not a thing that you really want to debate at 2:15 in the morning. They're like kind of so they're in my peephole, and I say, who is it? Blah, blah. And they kind of start to creep to the side. So knowing like that there's these walls where they can corners around. My door's inset. There's like a corner. They're kind of like creeping back. I'm like, what the heck is up? And I say, so like, can I help you? And it's like, I'm like, who is it? Right? It's normal. Who is it? And all they say is like, we're here for Sally. It's not like, hey, sorry to bother you. If I had a drink in me, 2 drinks, 10 drinks in me, I'm gonna say the same shit. Pardon my language. I'm gonna say, hey, sorry to bother you, dude. I'm your neighbor. This is my buddy. We're in the same academic program in history, and you don't know me, but I know that Sally is in there or might be in there. Do you mind if we talk to her? Just that's civilized. That's just basics. None of that. That's what wasn't said, right? It was, we're here for Sally. So now my antennas are really up. I'm like, okay, this girl's acting like she was scared or something like something spooked the heck out of her. She's incoherent, and these dudes are like, and I'm not talking about with a friendly voice. They're like, we're here for Sally. Like, we're here for Sally. I can't even do it. It was a declaration. Okay, I have 2 vulnerable women now in my house, basically, as far as I'm concerned, and 2 noticeably drunk dudes. So I actually opened the door because the way I see it is, okay, they want to talk to Sally. Sally is not, I've asked her if she's okay, blah, blah, blah. She's not said to me, she's acted like it. She has not said that she's in something happened or she's in danger. And I'm here anyway. So I opened the door, but these guys are trying to get in. Get barging them. I'm like, no, I don't think so. Right? Like, you're not, no. So I call over to his house, say, hey, you guys are here. You can check, pretty much, hey, you guys can talk here. But these guys aren't, no, I didn't supervise the conversation because my lady, I know in the meantime, based on her already, like, facial expressions before and being startled by the knocks, I know she's not comfortable with this. So I go check in with her. She's around the corner. I go, hey, like what the? She's like, get him the heck out of here. And I agreed. Like, these dudes are, I don't know them. Something happened. I provided. I mean, this is a woman who came, as far as I was concerned, I would describe that as seeking refuge or shelter. I don't know, and I'm willing to provide it. But sure, like 10, 15 minutes of asking, are you okay? Do you need something? Blah blah blah. There's only so much I can do. I'm not the authorities. These guys are whispering, by the way. They're talking I don't know what the hell they're whispering about. So something did happen. And to this day, I do not know. That was worth whispering about. Because they knew I was like within earshot. So they didn't want me to know. What the heck could possibly? That's up to you to decide. Suddenly I hear the door close. And Sally walks back in by herself. And she hangs around for like another between 10 and 15, and let's call it 12 and a half. She's still not unhappy, but at this point she's acting sort of like defeated and like ashamed. I have no idea. It's hard to describe. She comes back. She's still a rat, so she's still being kind of all over the place. But there's a different tone, and it's not a better one. It's unsettling, and I'm asking questions without being trying not to be intrusive, like chatting, and then kind of nothing. I'm getting nothing. She still won't take a seat. She won't accept a glass of water, even though nothing. In this pacing, and I said, well, what do you want to do? It's like she's like, I think I'm just gonna go home. I thought that was interesting because I'd gathered now, she'd been in a nearby apartment. Was in my neighbor, so like very close. Like, I don't know. I didn't know at the time. Now, maybe they gave her stuff. I don't know. But she said she was going home. So I was like, okay. Well, I'll talk to you later. Like, incidentally, the reason she shouldn't have known where I lived is because I had decided not to tell anybody. Yet. I'd spend a year away. There's a backstory behind that. And I was going to tell people in like my own time, which was kind of soonish. I was reconnecting with people, professionally and personally, and I didn't want to put it on blast. I didn't, it wasn't like a big, like a Facebook announcement. So, it was like I wanted to come back. I wanted to get settled in, and then certain people find out. There's privacy. Evidently, you really need to guard it, otherwise people really intrude on it. Okay, so then she leaves. I go to talk to my lady, and we're like, now we're whispering because we know that at least one of these guys who we don't know lives. I find out their names later, but we're going to use like Frank, and let's use Camby. That's like an old basketball player, Camby. I'm trying to use names that aren't their names, but aren't like just random, but it's just history department grad students like me. Except they're first years. They're in the first year, so they really shouldn't. They really, like, I'm been here forever. I'm not even like, people beyond a certain amount of years aren't even around. So it's weird. It was weird that took interest or even knew. But I'm whispering with my girl, like, what the hell is that? Like, trying to figure it out. Suddenly we hear that same knock, like that super hard knock, maybe even harder. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, these guys are back, right? And I'm thinking, they're back. They were just, they were trying to cause problems before. Now it's going to happen. And I look through the peephole again, and it's not them. It's actually 10 to 12 cops, a mix of HUPD, which is Harvard University Police. They have their own police force, and Cambridge Police, CPD as they call them, Cambridge Police, with guns drawn. I mean, the guns out, like sort of like pointing. I forget what they call it, but it's where they're pointing them almost forward, but just like slightly tilted down, basically just ready to blast you. Right? And they're knocking on my door. They like open the door. I'm like, I'm sorry, officer. First of all, I was trying to make sense of it. I'm like, what's happening? So certain it was a mistake. Do you have a warrant for something? Or are you in the right place? And they're like, open this door. We're going to knock it down. And I said, I'm sorry, officer. I'm just not super comfortable opening the door for several cops with their guns drawn. My lady comes to the door and is like, what's going on? These guys are talking between themselves, like you can audibly. They're like, okay, so you're going to knock it down? You want to knock it down? You knock it down. I immediately do like a, I don't know if you play basketball or no basketball, basically box out my lady. I just, basically just like a human shield and just back up away from this thing. This cop starts kicking at the door. Now, generally, it doesn't take this many kicks. And what's funny is that when the police report, the police report is hysterical because the officer who tried to knock it down claimed that I was leaning against the door, and that's why he couldn't knock it down. No, there's no person, especially anybody at that time. This is like George Floyd. There were all these police shootings. Nobody, especially if you're somebody of color, nobody. Even if you're not, even if you're just a person who isn't like a billionaire, right? You're not gonna do that. That's a good way to get killed. Especially if somebody they're kicking the door down. It's at least a good way to get crushed by a really heavy ass door. I don't know. He made excuses for kicking the door. Maybe that looked good in front of his buddies, but he kept kicking it until it did eventually come down. I don't know if somebody else helped him, but it came crashing down. And immediately hands are up. And I'm like, look, I'm not armed. I'm not resisting. My lady, she's legally blind, blah, blah, blah. And I just keep repeating that. They tackle me and put a gun, actually several guns in my back in my own living room. Okay, I'm in my pajama, like, old worn out t-shirt and shorts, house slippers, and boom, I'm tackled. They got knees against my back. They proceed to handcuff me in my own goddamn house. So at this point, I have no idea what's happening. I'll get into what actually happened in a minute. I'm confused. And the dude does tell me, like, hey, we got a report. And this is where I find out that this neighbor, a-hole, like, really, I mean, I'm being generous. I'm being nice, actually, had called 911. He had swatted me, if you're familiar with the term, SWAT. To SWAT somebody is basically to make a call to 911 or the cops and get SWAT, like the SWAT team to come and, like, mess them up. And in some cases, famous cases actually, people have ended up being killed. These guys had said that I had attacked them with a butcher knife or something like that. Yeah, butcher knife. Well, we'll get to that. I'm just going to say like what I knew at the time, and then we'll get into like the post-game analysis. I know not to talk to the cops, right? The cops are going to twist your words around, and they did. I think the police report says things I didn't say. I mean, some of it's accurate. I mean, like, for instance, they said the two idiots who called were, as they described it, moderately intoxicated. Well, I don't know, maybe they sobered up. They were pretty, I don't know if they were just intoxicated, like on alcohol. They might have been high on something. I have no idea. Evidently, this neighbor and his buddy, like Frank and, Canby, had called 911, made this claim. Bottom line is, I end up trying to tell my story. They don't care. I get carted off. I spend the night in jail. On the way out, I see, Sally, the two guys, like they're being kind of like herded away from me. And, I go out in the freezing cold in shorts. And, they actually let me put on boots. It's just because they happen to be by the door. But I'm like, hey, can I put on like some clothing? They're like, no. I mean, I knew it was freezing cold outside. It was really cold. They didn't care. So I got carted off. I spend the night in jail. Next morning, I'm awakened, and they're like, court, and I end up being charged with a felony. It's not even a joke. It's like a felony, some like assault or attack or threatening somebody with a dangerous weapon. Massachusetts got weird names for things, so that's what happened. But let's take a break there because that's part one. Let's have that be part one. I think I've talked long enough, but that's part one. That's sort of like as I called it earlier, kind of the play-by-play of what happened that day. I'm going to, in part two, which I'm going to do next, please listen to that one because in some ways that one's more I don't know if important, they're both important, but it's certainly more interesting on many levels, especially for certain of the listeners, all three of you. So, to be continued, thanks for listening to the Class of 99 podcast, the Class of 99, number 99.com. This is the website which takes you, for now, to our Two Harvards project, Tale of Two Harvards. If you haven't checked that out, check that out. Like, share, subscribe, and if you can, donate. We have a GoFundMe page to actually deal with what you're about to hear about in part two, or at least the consequences of it. Financial consequences of it. And those weren't the only ones. So, for now, to be continued, this is William signing off.